You're listening to the Lightforge podcast, the key to unlocking your arena success. I'm Adwikta, ADWCTA, and I'm here with my co-host, Merps.
Hey guys, this is Merps, happy to be here, and I don't think you can find two people more excited about the upcoming TGT release than the two of us.
But you know what I'm more excited about than the TGT release? We're on iTunes now, guys. So if you're watching this and you are not watching this on iTunes, or rather listening to this, if you're watching this, you should instead be listening to this on your iPhone or iPad or other device using iTunes.
Those other devices, man. Yeah.
I clearly know what I'm doing.
Clearly.
But we're on iTunes, so go catch us there, give us a rating, leave us a comment. It would all be really helpful to get this thing started. And we're also trying to get approval for Stitcher, which I think is a popular Android one. I use Podcast Addict myself, but we'll get approval from Stitcher probably next week. So if you search for us, we'll be on there too. This is getting a little more official. We're also trying to hire a guy in India right now to make some music for us, because all the podcasts have these intro music.
We're getting fancier and fancier every day. And look, guys, regardless of Adwikta's inability to articulate or use technology for that matter, you should check out his new videos, because they're chock full of great arena meta-analysis, and even though it's very long, I think it's really worth it. He spent a lot of time on it too, so let's make him feel a little bit better.
Thanks. Please do this just to make me feel a little better. What those videos are, I mean, I don't necessarily recommend everybody listening to this go watch those videos, because it's 2.5 hours altogether of just me looking card by card and going through big picture things about the meta. But if you like what you hear today, because we're going to go through a lot of the same stuff, but just on some levels on a more particular scale, and on other levels, we're going to skip a lot of things because we just don't have the time on this podcast to do that. But if you want to hear more, that's definitely the place to go. It's YouTube.com/ADWCTA, and it's the TGT Arena Meta Preview. So that's a good follow-up resource. Today we're on kind of a different schedule than we normally are, because we just released our tier list to the public. If you are listening to us and you don't know about the tier list, I don't know how you found us, but thanks. And you should go look at our tier list if you play the arena. It's heartharena.com/tier list. And it's always up to date with what we feel every single card is in the current meta. And we just did the TGT update, because Blizzard's releasing TGT tomorrow at the point when we're recording this. We're recording this on Sunday. We're recording this actually on Sunday, the 23rd of August. So check that out, and we'll be talking a lot today about the entire deep fried meta. Today is going to be about the tier list and how we rated things, and some disagreements that we've had, and where we think the meta's moving, because there's a lot of meta things happening. This should be the podcast for the arena meta. We're going to go on and on about it. And then we'll have a question from the GOAT, which will actually be somewhat related to the meta, because we're sticking with the theme. The GOAT's even serious today, so this stuff is real. And card good bad after that about the Brewmaster, which is a card we get asked about a lot. And then that'll wrap us up. So that's what's coming at you in the next hour.
Guys, get absolutely hyped. Also get your popcorn out, because at some point in this stream, Adwikta and I will actually be debating our key tier score disagreements, because even though we act like we're quite friendly here on the podcast, there are some heated discussions when we are trying to determine the tier list. And the boxing gloves are coming out today, and all I have to say is #Team Merps, #Merps is right.
Man,
there we go.
No one's gonna do #Team Adwikta. It's way too many letters. It's not a fair fight. But let's start this off on a more friendly note. Let's start off with Deep Fried Meta, which is what we call our segment where we deep fry the meta. And we're not going to worry about how deep frying the meta actually works as a metaphor. So the tier list, overall themes and trends in our rankings. The first thing that I think you should, I mean, probably not the first thing you notice, but the thing that's actually the most important is not the North Sea Kraken. The North Sea Kraken is our highest rated common card. It sits at a 86, which is 6 whole points above the piloted Shredder. But that's not what you should focus on first. You should focus on the Pit Fighter. That is the 5/6 neutral minion that's being rated at a 76 right now, which makes it significantly higher than any of the Spider Tank, Yeti, branch, which puts it kind of close to the Zombie Chow. It's the same score actually as the Zombie Chow and the Dark Iron Dwarf. It's above a Silver Hand Knight to be the best 5-drop. And this is such a clutch development to the meta in terms of the offering consistency, and the number of times that you're going to see this card is going to be ridiculous. Because of one really simple thing. 5/5s for 5 mana right now are really insanely good in the meta. We don't rate any 5/5s for 5 mana below, I think, like a 60. And that's missing one entire stat. You look at a 3/3 for 3 mana. Those are rated, like, I think below a 40. 4/4s for 4 mana is rated below a 50. But the 5/5 and 6/6s are, I think, rated in the low 50s. 5/5s hit the meta right now, right where it hurts, because people are still relying on Yetis, they're relying on Senjins, they're relying on things with exactly 5 health and not as much attack. And so these Tigers, these I don't know, Lotheb, Frost Elementals, even things that come out after turn 5, they trade very well on the board. And so a 5/6 is just a huge bonus on top of that.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about Pit Fighter is really, I think this will be the death of the Yeti. And not, you know, like the Yeti will not be valuable anymore, but the Pit Fighter will take its place as kind of the king of the mid game. And that's what the Yeti held on to for so long. Ever since Classic, the game started at 2, and Yeti was the mid game. Because it basically was the king at 4, and because 5-drops were very questionable back then, the Yeti just reigned supreme over 3s, 4s, and 5s. So that range of 3 turns, the Yeti was just extremely dominant. Plus, it dodges all of the 4 attack things, which are very prevalent in the arena. Now, the dominance of the Yeti has been getting chipped away by just card dilution, and also piloted Shredder really knocked it down a peg as well. And with the emergence of real 3-drops. But now, with the anticipated slower meta, and also so many things on turn 4 and on turn 5 having 5 health, I really see the Pit Fighter as being that new standard. And then, of course, you can ask, well, why isn't Boulderfist Ogre? It's just one better with the same stat distribution. But it's different, because the Pit Fighter eats up basically everything that there is on turn 4, and it contests super well with a lot of things on turn 5. The Ogre, the only time in which you actually reap the advantage of the Ogre is versus the Pit Fighter, and there's only one Pit Fighter right now. So you see that break there, and that break used to be between Yeti and 5-drops, and obviously other 4s. But now the break, I think, is going to be between the Pit Fighter and 6-drops and other 5s as well. And whoever holds that break that I'm describing is kind of the king of the mid game. So that's why I think Pit Fighter will really kind of signal the death of the Yeti.
Yeah, and I think I don't think the Yeti's going to die off as much, just because it's still a very flexible card. I talk in my video about how GVG shifted the center from 4 to around 3.5. And now, with the Pit Lord coming, we still have all those good 3-drops. It's going to shift it back, but it's going to still center on the Yeti. That being said, Pit Lord is still a really great card, but I don't think it by itself is enough to like send the Yeti into oblivion.
By Pit Lord, you mean Pit Fighter?
Yes, I mean Pit Fighter, but Pit Lord is the same stats, and it comes out 1 turn earlier. Yeah, I mean the Pit Fighter. So one of the things with more 5-drops is that the 5-drops, they were never even a card that was too slow, right? If you put out a 5-drop and someone removes you with a hard removal, let's say an Assassinate, that trades evenly. Let's say they remove you with a Fireball, they got 1 extra mana. it's not quite so slow that your opponent can swing the board around just because you played a big thing and it got removed. When you start getting to 6 drops, that gets 1 more mana, which is usually double the amount of mana savings you get from a hard removal. Hard removal is usually coming in at 4 or 5. So that's why the Boulder Fist Ogre is still not as good, even though it does deal with Pit Lords very well. Pit Fighters and Pit Lords. Man, me and talking. It's just not happening today.
Talking is extremely hard, and here we are doing an hour of solely talking. I don't know what you were thinking.
When I started this podcast, I didn't realize how bad I am at talking.
Yes. Anyways, moving on. You mentioned Assassinate, and I think that transitions pretty well into one of our other points: hard removals in general. And if you look at the tier list, you can see that we raised the points for basically all hard removals, and especially raised the score of Shadow Word Death. Would you like to talk a little bit more behind that reasoning?
Yeah, I think I was pushing it harder than you were. I mean, I think we both agreed that it was going to go up, but I wanted it. So if this doesn't work out, you guys can blame me when we readjust it back by 2 points. I think Merps wanted it up 2, and I wanted it up 4. These are just like widespread, all like real hard removals, like a Hex or a Polymorph or an Assassinate. And we moved up conditional ones by like a half point, by like 2 points instead of 4 points, right? Things like Execute and like Hunter's Mark. But we did that because when there are more big things between the Pit Fighter and the North Sea Kraken and some other big cards that are coming that are class cards, like the Rogue Shadowpan, like the Warlock, and then there's also this Rulemonger card that's a normal neutral card that's also super big. You're going to have more targets consistency-wise for hard removals, and the targets are going to swing harder because it's not like we added like 1 6-drop or 1 5-drop. The stats on just a Kraken, the stats on a Kraken, let's figure out how to call this thing. What are we calling it? Are we calling it North Sea Kraken or North Sea Kraken?
It's a Kraken. You released the Kraken.
North Sea Kraken. So a North Sea Kraken is still a 9/7, right? That's still 8 mana, 7.5 mana's worth of stuff out there that you remove with a hard removal. A Rulemonger is a 5/9, and I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation too. But that's 7 mana's worth of stats right there on the board. So these swings caused by the hard removals are going to be larger and larger. And even other removals that you may have thought of as more or less hard removals, like Fireball, they lose a little bit of their potency because there's more and more things out there now, like a Force Tank Max, that you just can't take care of with a Fireball.
Yeah, I think one thing to note, there's always the counter argument that people make that say, well, removals are conditional, right? Wouldn't you rather just have another minion or so? It's really important to have those removals just because play revolves so much around Shadow Word Death, Assassinate. You having it not only catches your opponent more off guard, it kind of changes the equation of how not only how people play, but how you can afford to play when you're ahead. A lot of times, you just lose if you don't have a hard removal. Like they drop that Force Tank Max and you're a non-ping class. You just have to either throw 3 cards in there or risk them having a chance of lethal just by hitting you in the face next turn. So not only does it give you a safety net in terms of whether you're ahead or behind, but it also changes the dynamic of your opponent playing around it as well. So they might be more inclined to play into it because of the card dilution. So if you have it, it becomes even more valuable. Because if it gets diluted up to a point where it's really tough to get Shadow Word Death, but you have that card, your opponent's like, well, I can play this, and I don't fear the tempo loss, just because it's so rare to get that card, and then you play it, boom, and get back on the board.
And they can't play around it, right? Because they have big cards, and they need to play them at some time. So if you're not going to play a big card when it's generally to your favor to play it, when are you going to play it? Until you have until you're in mind control territory? That's even worse, right? So you got to play it early, and then Shadow Word Death comes in and wrecks your opponent. So that one went up by 6 points. It's our highest rising hard removal card. And that's where we think the meta is going in the big picture. That being said, 4.6 points is not the end of the world. It's half a tier. You're not going to... arena meta moves kind of slowly, right? You cannot play the arena for a while, come back, and you won't become an awful player. Whereas if you leave rank for a while, you come back, you will have no idea what the meta is. You will lose all your games. Your deck that you're using is going to be awful. In arena, you know, you leave a 7-win player, you come back a 5.5-win player. It's not the biggest drop. But it does change, and so that's why we're shifting these cards like this. We don't even make, one thing in our tier list is we don't make predictions when we don't have to. So everything we've moved based on things that we know that the meta is going to do, which means card dilution, which is obviously going to happen. That just means there's less chance that certain cards are being offered, so there's less targets for things. We also moved, I think we moved BGH up by 2 as well. Just to get in with the idea that just because there are more cards that are bigger, people are going to have to take them. This is the arena. This is not ranked. You have to take certain cards. And we could have gone ahead and say, well, maybe 5/5s are worse now, right? It dominated the meta before. We're making the predictions no longer necessarily going to dominate the meta. Maybe we should have lowered it by 2 points. Maybe, but there's no need to make that prediction. That's like a next level prediction that even if we are to make the prediction, we're not adjusting the scores yet, and we'll wait a couple weeks before we start moving things that dramatically.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes in tier list considerations that I would say probably 20 to 30% of what we put out there gets put into the final product of the tier list, and the other 70% is tabled.
Yeah.
Some of it's grabbed, some of it's tabled. For example, if you see the considerations in the tier list with the 1-drop bonus for warlocks and rogues and the 1-drop penalty for priests, that was something we thought of months before we actually implemented it. It was an idea that came to us, but we just wanted more stats. We wanted to just be more sure before we put something that drastic in. And you guys, you can imagine with something this huge coming out, TGT release, we have a couple of ideas, and they might be implemented, they might not, but that'll be seen.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Inspire cards. The Inspire scaling that we did, I think everyone was who was interested in our tier list was kind of wondering how we were going to do it, and we ended up just saying, look, we're going to look at every single class separately because every class has a different hero power, and it came out with some very interesting kind of interactions. So I'm going to start with the Kodo Rider, which is what I'm going to call the final stage interaction, right? This card comes out very late. It's just how good your hero power is in the late game. And in the very late game, you have something like, oh, well, the warrior's always going to end up at the bottom. Spoiler alert. Almost always. Unless it's a negative Inspire mechanic, because that hero power doesn't do much. But now you look at a hunter, and it's better than a warrior. Whereas it may not do much more than a warrior if this was an early card, like the lowly squire. So they would be ranked the same. As the Kodo Rider, towards late game, you do want to use your hero power, because your hero power does more. Whereas for the warrior, your hero power will still only do more like half the time. And whereas so some of the higher ones, you look at a Kodo Rider, like Mage Paladin, those are flexible late game hero powers. Something like the Druid would suffer a little because you can't always keep using your face. Something like the Rogue or the Priest comes in the middle because you don't know if you can use your hero power, right? The Rogue hero power is great in the beginning. On a lowly squire, Rogue is #1. But when we're looking at a Kodo Rider, do you really want that hero power in the end? And then can you, because for a Kodo Rider, you have to use it every turn. Can you use the Rogue hero power every turn? Well, for one, you're going to replace your earlier Rogue hero power. So that's already a downside there. So we looked at all of this, and we came up with these like very varied kind of numbers for each class for Inspire and other hero power related cards.
Yeah, when Wizard first announced Inspire, I immediately messaged Adulta and started complaining to him and was basically saying, this is going to take us forever. And it did take us forever. It took us a long time to get this because not only do we have to evaluate everyone's hero power once, we have to apply for every single card, like Adulta says, because it's at that point in the game where we have to ask, do you want to use your hero power on turn 8? Do you want to use it on turn 2? Do you want to use it on turn 5? Or in the case of some cards, can I afford not to use this hero power in the mid game because you have negative Inspire mechanics sometimes, which forces you to not use your hero power or suffer a severe penalty for using it. So we ask at that moment, in the context of this class and the win conditions for this class, how good is this or how bad is this? And that just takes so much consideration for the meta and predictions of a slower meta as well. Man, that was... Blizzard, if you're out there, please do not make any more Inspire-like mechanics again that differ for every class.
And if you do it, make it in like an adventure pack where there's less cards, not in one of these big ones. It's just way too much work for us to handle again. Okay, but like, and like, just to give you an idea, we didn't even mention this card yet, but like Mookless Champion, that puts another wrinkle on everything, because now, which are the best classes for Mookless Champions? Paladin and Shaman. Shaman normally isn't the best class because your totems can sometimes be useless and they're random, and if you don't have the board, they just get eaten up. But in Mookless Champion, you get a 2/2 on the board. It's awesome. It's the best hero power because you get a not 2/2, you get a 1/3 on the board because a 1/3 can attack, whereas your totems normally can't. It's even better than getting a 2/2 with the Paladin, and it has an extra ability on top of that, right? For the Shaman,
Yeah.
it just it becomes an amazing hero power. And Warrior still has the worst hero power for Mookless Champion. That was always our starting point. This was the one time where we talked about Warrior so much, because we just had to start off with, what if your hero power is worthless? How much is this card worth? And then Coliseum Manager's the last card I'm going to talk about, which is the only time the Warrior shines, because that's an actual bad hero power. You generally don't want to use it. If you use it, you bring the card back to your hand and you lose tempo. So, in that case, the Warrior wins out.
Yep. See, Warriors are not the worst class. Just draft all Coliseum Managers.
Which is a pretty good card. It's ranked pretty highly. There's two pretty good 3-drops that have come into the meta, which we're excited about. Silent Knight and the Coliseum Manager. And there's actually, if you want to talk about how the curve's going to look, there's actually good 2-drops. People think of GVG as moving everything so fast. There's better 2-drops actually in TGT than in GVG. There's the flame guy that's a 2/3 and throws 1 damage at your opponent. That's really good. That's better than any GVG 2-drop. And there's also, I'm forgetting something, but there's another 2-drop that's good. Take our word for it.
There's a card out there, and in this game, there's some cards out there that are pretty good. See, I just summarized your statement.
Good cover for me. So let's talk about Dilution now. You wanna start on this one?
Flame Strike. Let's talk about Flame Strike, the boogeyman of the arena. But with every single expansion that comes out, there will be dilution of cards. And like I talked about earlier, this changes the way that people play around things. This also changes how people will draft as well. If there is dilution of cards for Flame Strike, and I think for Flame Strike, the value can get lower as well, just because the meta can get slower. And if the meta gets slower, then you're going to have a lot of like big stuff out there that Flame Strike just can't take care of. So on one hand, with dilution of cards, you want Flame Strike, but on the other hand, if the meta does get slower and then you get these like big minions out there, it'll just make Flame Strike a little less effective. So I think this plays both ways.
Yeah, I mean, and when we talk about dilution, this is once again something that will definitely happen in the arena. I see people sometimes saying like, "Oh no, the meta won't get any slower than it was before." That's just wrong. Like we can tell, like factually speaking, there is 0% chance that the meta is not going to get at least a little bit slower, just because of the card pool that's coming out and the offering.
You're still going to see aggro depth.
Yeah, the question really that people should be debating is how much slower. Right.
Yes.
I think it's going to get fairly slower. Merps is probably a little less than me on the slow side, I'd say.
More than a little.
Yeah, you're not nearly as slow as I am. But some people are of the mindset that it's only going to get a tiny bit slower, and all of these could be right. But the people who say that it's not going to get slower at all, or that it's going to get a little faster, there's 0% chance that's happening. And with Flame Strike, if people play around it less, it's good, as Merp says, and I'm going to agree with all the statements. I'm not even going to just repeat everything, but there are just many cards that will dodge Flame Strike. I never thought Flame Strike was a terribly awful card, and I think most players who are Infinite don't think that it's such an awful card to face. It's just fairly easy to play around. Now it's even easier to play around, so we're still all going to play around it. We're not going to play into the Flame Strike. And so I think Flame Strike is going to actually drop in value. That would be my prediction, even though less people play around it, at least for Infinite players. Just because, really, when you get to 8-9 wins, your opponent is still going to be playing around Flame Strike, if at all possible. They're not going to, just because Flame Strike is seen 20-25% less often, that doesn't mean that they're not going to, that they're going to just ignore it.
Yeah, so I thought Flame Strike was definitely an interesting card to talk about when you talk about card dilution. Because usually when you talk about card dilution, the first thought is, well, if a card is good and the pool gets diluted, that card is even more valuable.
Yep.
And we just want to keep on reiterating the fact that that's not necessarily true because of the way that the game shifts, because of the way that the game plans out. And who knows? Flame Strike could be just as valuable or a little bit more valuable, but it's not something that's automatic.
Yep, totally agree. And on the other hand, if you have a card like where dilution is going to have a serious impact, not in terms of you playing around stuff, but just in terms of your general arena experience, is on silences. Because you have a Spellbreaker and you have an Iron Begal, and Blizzard said, okay, we're not going to release any more silence cards. Silence cards are not fun, and they get rid of the abilities on the minions, and the abilities are fun, so they stopped releasing silence cards. Well, now, it's been diluted once in Nax, once in GVG, once in BRM, and now again. So if you compare the meta after TGT to the meta of Classic, you're in a whole different world as far as silences go. It's things like that that will have the biggest impact, I think.
I think so as well. And with silence, silence is definitely a mechanic that if Blizzard could go back, I don't know if they would eliminate silence, but they would do it differently somehow. Silence is kind of the fun killer, right? And more so in a constructed vein. In Arena, a lot of it depends on the draft as well. But
I like the fun killers. The fun killers means the limitation of your opponent being able to run away and snowball to a victory. And it limits you as well, but if you're the better player, you can squeeze out the edges a little better. I don't know.
Right. But with all these expansions, because every expansion has to introduce kind of a new mechanic or something, they throw something new in. So you're going to have less silences, but at the same time, there's going to probably be a lot of effects. And while you may think that you want silences for that, with a lot of effects, it kind of, your silence has less impact on every single thing that you silence, because there's going to be all of these things that you either want to silence or you're kind of like meh about silencing.
Yeah, if they have a small effect to silence, your silence is not going to get that much value, right? Like if it gains one stat or something. But also, they could just release more Battlecry cards, right? Or things similar to that, which can't get silenced. There are ways to design around silence. And I don't know if Blizzard's like taking a mental note to do that, or if they just are trying to ditch the silence mechanic altogether. But regardless, this is kind of the direction it's heading, and you'll notice it. Let's go on to the next topic. Overall winner and overall loser. We get asked this a lot, right? Like, which class is going to get so much better and which class is going to get so much worse? And I think we can all agree before we go forward on who the loser is. Who do you think the loser is, Merps?
Out of the 8 classes?
Yeah, out of the 8 classes.
Oh, well, we can talk about that. But I thought there were 9 classes, but I think recently we've disproved that.
Yeah, there's only 8 classes, and it's totally okay, because 8 classes is still plenty of classes.
Still plenty.
Still plenty.
Plenty to play.
Yeah, so what do you think is the worst class? Sorry.
Other than, this unnamed class, which is not in the 8, I think the loser of TGT is Priest. And I know you disagree with that, but I think Priest got kind of conditional, funky cards. Some of their cards are just focused on healing, like Flash Heal, also Power Word Glory. Those are just pretty bad cards in the arena. You really
just don't pick those.
No, and that's fine. But still, they got
Dilution.
some bad cards. Holy Champion is a good card. I like it. And
by the way, we have that card rated above a Yeti.
It's good. And like I said, Death of the Yeti.
yeah, we have that card rated above Yeti. It's the 3/5, or if you heal it gets +2.
But you even look at the higher rarity cards. You have stuff like Convert and Confuse. These are cards that really, they're very situational. And Priest already, even before the expansion, was at a limit of situational class cards, combo-y cards like Inner Fire, just stuff like that. So I would have liked to have more solid stuff, but the Priest was already pretty good. And if you're anticipating a slower meta, then you're moving into the Priest's battlefield. Yeah. And I can imagine that Blizzard doesn't want to give them strong cards, because if it is going slower, Priest is going to get stronger, and you just can't give them more of an advantage.
Yes, I think that's where we disagree, right? I don't think Priest is getting worse. I think it's getting better because it has a premium card. And in TGT, I think like half the classes don't have a card better than a Yeti that got released. Maybe even more than half the classes. But so that makes Priest actually in the good category as far as cards that are released goes. And on top of that, like I said, I think the meta's going slower than Merps thinks it's going slower, right? I think it's going to like drop by like 1 or 1.5 mana even. And so in that case, like you shift the meta back, the priest wins so hard. You have Shadow Word Death, you have Mind Control, you have this wonderful thing called your Hero Power, which you're going to be super encouraged to use. It's always that if the priest sticks on the board, they win the game, right? Well, if you give the priest several more turns to stick on the board, they're going to have more and more of a chance of sticking on the board. So that's why I don't think priest is actually going to get worse. I think it's going to get better. The classes that I think is going to get worse, and you can listen to this on my video series on YouTube as well, it's Paladin, it's Shaman a little bit, and it is probably the largest drop I think is going to be in Warlock. And the Paladin drop is really just because of two things. One is their cards are really good, and that's going to get diluted, and they don't have cards to replace that. And two, they are notorious for not having like almost any hard removal. They have equality. That's kind of it, and that's a semi-hard removal. Outdoor Peacekeeper doesn't really count. The thing still stays on the board, able to be buffed. So that's going to be a problem, right? We're raising all the hard removals for a reason. We're raising it because they're going to cause really big swings, and the Paladin is incapable of it. So there's nothing really against the Paladin. And also, right, the Paladin relies on a curve, and Shielded Minibot's going to get diluted, and they don't have anything else. It's not like they actually had good cards for the curve. They really just had Shielded Minibot. Argent Protector requires a card to stick on the board first, so it can't get removed. So sort of, but not really. Anyway, that card's getting diluted as well. The more important thing for the Warlock, though, is that the whole Warlock game plan is very much bad when the meta slows down. Because the idea is you have a lot of small cards in your deck, and you put them all out, and you establish the board, and you don't deal a lot of damage to the opponent's face. You just continuously clear the board while dealing a little damage, and then you eventually get card advantage because you can tap, because your opponent's not dealing any damage to your face. And then you have the best hero power in the game with the card advantage. The problem with that is, if your opponent lasts a bit longer, well, now your window for winning is much thinner in terms of how often you will need to tap and how low your health gets and how much reach your opponent has. And on top of that, the cards that they got were not good. And the one good card they did get was this really freaking huge demon. So between the neutral cards and this really freaking huge demon that's also really good, you're going to shift the Warlock's curve back, which is also not in the Warlock's favor, right? If you have a larger curve, you don't need to tap as often, which plays against the Warlock's hero power. It's just kind of a very messy situation for the Warlock. The one good thing is Void Caller, because Void Caller just got some good targets to call out now. But the bad thing is you're going to see Void Caller less, because we raised Void Caller as well, but you're going to see it less often just because of dilution.
So if you're able to draft that 3 to 4 Void Caller deck, it's going to be much rarer, but man, is that deck going to be so good.
Yeah.
But I think we're actually in agreement with some stuff. So when I say that the priest is the overall loser, my focus is more so on just kind of the card quality. And I agree that if the meta does slow down, the priest does benefit. So my kind of criticism was more towards the cards that they got and less so towards the meta focus. But this also comes back to our fundamental difference in thinking how slow the meta is going to be, right? Yeah. And I think both of us agree about the overall winner. I don't think there's any disagreement here, correct?
Well, depends on what you're going to say.
I'm going to say Druid.
Okay, then we agree.
Was there something else? I think Rogues also got
maybe the hidden ninth class makes a comeback, right? I don't know how you're thinking about this, but maybe that we're all totally wrong, and the class that shall not even be named would actually just totally overrun the meta, having nothing to do with the cards that they got, but more to do with just the fact that the meta hits this sweet spot where all of their cards become super good.
Yeah, it could be. But the Druid's just got some unfair cards. Living Roots, I can't believe Living Roots is able to go face as well. It is just strictly better than any 1 mana 2 damage card, which a lot of classes have. And those saplings are so gosh darn cute.
Oh my
so
god.
cute.
That is the best card. By the way, that's my favorite. Druid's always been one of my top classes, and it's been a class I really like. Yeah, I stabilize myself with it when I have a bad loss or something. I just pick Druid, and I go along with it, and then it wins, and I'm happy. It's not a good 12-win deck for me, but it's a good 7 to 9 range, and it's just got more consistent. Druid right now curves out. Oh, by the way, special tidbit that's not going to be written anywhere. If you're worried about the curve, worst curves now is the Priest. The absolute worst curve. So that plays into what you're saying with the Priest Dilution and how they may not be able to handle this new batch of cards coming in. Second worst curve, Shaman. Shaman has a really freaking awkward curve with those 2-drops like Totem Golem that takes your 3 plays but forces you to play another 2-drop, and you don't have 2-drops to begin with. You just kind of have a Whirling Zap and nothing else, and all of your removals also overload, so you can't even use a removal. Like, it's just an awful spot. And the best curve was always the Druid, because it had 2 2-drops and then it had a key 3-drop. And now it has an additional 1-drop and an additional good 2-drop. So we're rolling right now with the Druid. You ever feel bad about your arena luck, just draft the Druid, you'll curve out, you'll do fine, it'll be wonderful. And these are high power cards, right? A 2/1/1s, for the most part, is better than an Argent Squire, because you can deal 2 damage if you need to, but otherwise it takes your opponent 2 1-damage hits to remove off the board. It's only worse if your opponent has a swipe or something like that. But on turn 1, it's definitely better.
Yeah.
And it has, I think this is understated, but Druid of the Saber, it's a beast.
Beast Druid is real. Savage Combatant is a beast.
Savage Combatant is a beast. That's another amazing card. And we have this new beast card that's a good card decent card by itself, 4 mana 4/4, and it gives +3 to a beast. And you know what's great about Druid of the Saber?
It's a beast.
Well, it's not only a beast.
It has stealth.
It has stealth. That's not the way to say it has stealth. It's not like, oh, it has stealth. It has stealth. It's a stealth beast that the Druid has. That's already an amazing card. And then you can trigger your Druid of the Fangs. You can trigger your, what is it, like a Wild Waker or something like that?
Wild Walker, right?
Wild Walker.
Wild Walker.
I'm never going to get Walkers and Wakers right in this game.
Exactly. It's Flame Waker, but it's a Wild Walker.
Okay. So either way, it's ridiculous. We're probably undervaluing that card right now. I think we have it. We definitely have it above a Yeti. I don't know how far high up we have it above a Yeti.
Combatant, I think it's 92 right now. We rated it extremely high.
No, Druid of the Saber.
Oh, Druid of the Saber. We're talking about something different.
Yeah.
But it is quite good.
It's quite high. We may have to move it up depending on how good Beast Druid becomes in the arena. All right. So now we move on to the fun part. Key tier score disagreements. You guys always wonder what goes on. You guys always wonder what goes on in the background when we make these evaluations, and we are sometimes very far apart on certain cards, and sometimes one of us just gives up and goes, you're taking responsibility for this when this gets like knocked down or raised by however much. And other times we come to some middle of the road like safe answer that we know we'll have to adjust at some point. But these are the big ones, and I think you're going to see a trend in here, which is that I like cards. I think they're good. I'm very positive, and I'm very much anticipating that TGT will change the meta and that TGT will have some good cards. And Merps hates. Merps
I'm a hater. What can I say?
Just anytime I try to say a card is good, he knocks it down by 2-4 points. Anytime I try to say a card is really good, he's like, but it should really be 2 tiers lower than that. You know that, right? And so why don't you tell us why you hate on the card that is our best common card in the entire game now.
Alright guys, round 1, North Sea Kraken. If you can believe this, because I could not, Adwicta wanted this at a 90. Okay, he wanted North Sea Kraken at a 90. I wanted it below a piloted Shredder, which is an 80. Now, I'm going to lay out why I think that Adwicta is delusional, and just plain wrong. It's a turn 9 card. That is so slow. You can compare it to Fire Elemental and say that it scales well when compared with the Fire Elemental. But the Fire Elemental comes out on turn 6 and has an impact on turn 6 versus an immediate impact on turn 9. That's 3 whole turns. That's the difference between the game still being in contention and the game already being lost by that time. And I agree.
Current meta.
In the current meta, and once again, going to the fundamental difference, that I don't think the meta is going to slow down by that much. I think maybe you shift everything by a turn, which is why I believe in the Pit Fighter, but not by 3 turns plus, which is what has to happen for the Kraken to really have the effect that you're hoping for.
I think that the effect that I'm hoping for, by the way, is that it's actually a better Fire Elemental. It's not even a worse Fire Elemental, it's a better Fire Elemental. Stat-wise, it's a better one. It deals the 4 damage, which has a significant impact. It's just super heavily overstated. And it has enough health to kind of take care of itself. So the additional damage is kind of meant for going face more than anything else. But I do agree that the meta kind of has to shift back by 3 mana in order to make it as good as a Fire Elemental by its normal stats, which means that it would be better than a Fire Elemental if the meta shifts back by 3 turns. The meta's not shifting back by 3 turns. No one's making that prediction. So if it shifts back by a turn and a half, along with the North Sea Kraken's I forgot again. The North Sea Kraken's amazing ability and superpowered value and tempo swing, it's going to get very close to the Fire Elemental. So if right now we view Fire Elemental where it is, and Fire Elemental should probably get even better in the next... I fully believe Fire Elemental is going to get better when we're going to raise it in our next tier list update. And so the Kraken is going to follow that. So if the Fire Elemental is a 98, then the Kraken being, 3 turns later? And if you top deck it or something, it doesn't even matter, right? It's turn 10 already anyway.
Sure.
It's just going to mess things up so hard.
It's a good card. I'm not denying that.
It's like a 3 for 1. It's a force tank max that you can't ping off of, and that you can't even hard remove before it gets its advantage. Like,
sure.
It takes all the downsides of force tank max and says, "Oh, you're gone."
The problem, and the reason that Force Tank Max is not rated very high as well, or no card that high is rated, is rated above, I think a 70 or something. I think that's what we have, Ironbark Protector. Just because you don't get a chance to play it, and I understand top decking is great. The meta will slow down, and a lot of times you don't play stuff on curve, which is something you preach over and over again. I understand that, but I just think the fact that you actually can't play it until turn 9 will hurt you a lot. And at that point, yes, 4 damage is good, and right now 4 damage is a good break point as well, but 3 damage on turn 6 will have more impact a lot of times than 4 damage on turn 9. Especially if the game is still in contention.
But it gets played later, right? You're still on turn 6. The turn 6 gets played later too.
Turn 6 can get played on turn 6.
I mean, the Fire Elemental gets played later too, right? Like your Fire Elemental, if you have every time you see a Fire Elemental, if you track when it's played, it's going to get played on turn 6 less than half the time. That's just a fact. That's not like a playstyle thing. That's just how you're going to get your cards. So you can't look at it at turn 6. You have to look at a Fire Elemental as sometimes on turn 6, sometimes on turn 9. Same with the Kraken. Alright, let's move on. We've come to sort of a compromise where I came out a little ahead on this particular one because it's still rated more to my favor. No, I mean rating-wise, right? Like it's rated closer to how I feel it is than how you feel it is. Not that I've won the argument. It is settled now. Adwicto wins round 1. No. Now next one. Why don't we start with Ball of Spiders?
You can start this time since I started last time. I
can start with Ball of Spiders? Okay. Well, I don't actually have open right now where Ball of Spiders is.
It's a 76.
It's a 76. And I rated it a 76, very confidently not remembering what it was rated, because I took Nourish, which we have at like a 68 or something.
You wanted this thing higher.
Yeah, I wanted this thing even higher. And I said this is like a Nourish, which is a Druid card that draws 3 cards, and Ball of Spiders is a Hunter card that draws 3 web spinners, basically. It doesn't draw 3 web spinners, it puts 3 web spinners on the board for 6 mana. So for 1 extra mana, it puts out enough tempo, and 1/1s are disproportionately like good for tempo, right? That's not, because normally if you get 6 stats on the board, that's like 2.5 worth of tempo. But if you get 3 1/1s on the board, that's like more than 3 mana's worth of tempo. That's like not quite 4 mana's worth of tempo, but almost. And that's one of the reasons why Muster for Battle is so good. So you're starting out with a point where this gets you more tempo than Nourish. It doesn't have the same tempo loss. You do lose the ability to draw into your removals or things that have an impact on the turn. But what you get back is that you're getting back 6 guaranteed beasts, which makes your beast synergy much more consistent. And in the arena, any card that we have a beast on that draws even 1 beast gets 4 points, and we sometimes give it more points for drawing more beasts. And Web Spinner is rated, I think, like a 60-something, high 60s. And it's rated that high because of one reason. Because it's a beast that draws another beast. Otherwise, 1 mana for a 1/1, even if you don't lose a card, is not all that great. So that's why I like Ball of Spiders. And because I think the meta's getting slower and this card's playable. And I like playing Control Hunter.
You do like playing Control Hunter. So here's my argument against Ball of Spiders. First of all, this will blow everyone's mind, but hunters are not druids. Crazy, right? It's such a crazy idea. I know.
You have the beast synergies. You have the ability to have reach. Nope. I don't buy it. They're both green.
They're both green. Oh man, I think the argument just ends right here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at Nourish, so pros and cons of Nourish. Pros for Nourish, you get to play it and draw your cards right away. And if you just compare it to 5 mana, draw 3 cards, which is similar to 5 mana, draw 3 cards from Ball of Spiders, and for 1 extra mana, you get the 3 1/1s, I think that's how you can interpret it as, oh man, huge value. Number 1, Hunter is used to playing faster. Number 2, and I think this is important, when you play Ball of Spiders, and after they kill off the 1/1s, what you're getting back in the card draw are creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're behind, which a lot of times you will be after you play Ball of Spiders and you're kind of giving up the board, creatures are not what you need to kind of get back on the board. And as a hunter,
you're going to average like 6 spells in your deck, if that, with the new meta.
Sure. And Nourish helps you draw into what is in your deck, which number 1, you know what is in your deck. Number 2, you're probably going to draw more spells, and that helps you gain back some of the tempo that you lost by playing something like a Nourish or Ball of Spiders. With Ball of Spiders, you never get spells, so you're giving up the board, and what you're getting back in return is, some beasts have charge and everything, but you're not getting back the high value spells that will get you back into the game.
We all know web spinners really like King Crushes. This is just a fact.
They do.
And so you'll disproportionately get huge charges out. You'll have stuff that affects the board. I think beasts disproportionately stealth and charge compared to other minions. So, and I just mean that seriously. Like, that's what they make those cards are. So it's not like, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, you don't get the spells. But yeah, it's true. You don't get any chance to get a spell. But beasts are pretty good for initiative too. And the thing with Nourish, right, you don't necessarily play it as your last card. You almost never play it as your last card that you're holding in your hand. You play a Ball of Spiders, and you play a Houndmaster, right? You play a Ball of Spiders, and you play a Kill Command. You can do things like that.
Yeah, and I think this just goes back to how we fundamentally play the classes as well. Yeah. So, another big difference.
Oh, and I think people, like, if you're wondering, like, why I play Control Hunter in the arena, and if I'm any good at it, like, I average, I don't know, like 7.5 wins maybe with Hunter in the arena. So I know some people may average more than that, but that's still pretty good. And I play where the deck takes me, and it's not like I play Control Hunter all the time, but with the deck gives me a lot of good like large minions or some card draw or stuff like that. I think Hunter could be really good at control, especially now with that new card, the Power Shot, that deals 2 damage to 3 things. It now has as much board clear, and this is going to blow your mind, but Hunter now has as much board clear as any class besides Mage. Because Hearth Arena tracks like how often you get board clears and things like that. Hunter is now better than Paladins. It's better than Priests, even though those the Paladin and Priest have common cards. And why? It's because Hunter already has Unleash the Hounds. So this is just adding things to the consistency. And so you can play Control Hunter. You have these combos. Hunter's also like kind of a combo deck. You could play it as a combo deck. So if you get the cards, you can play it, and it works. And your opponent gets super confused, which is always the best part. And I think that helps a lot.
There is a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, should we move on to the final round?
Final round.
Elemental Destruction.
The best card in the entire game.
God, you were so wrong. So
180. Wrong. Better than a Dr. Boom, better than a Tyrion.
I need your explanation first, because you told this to me previously.
I'm kidding, by the way. I don't think it's better than a Dr. Boom, but I do think it's...
I know.
I do think it's better than that, yeah. And I think this one... So on Ball of Spiders, we once again compromised. And I think on that one, we went with Merps' side, because I wanted it even higher than that. I really like Ball of Spiders. But in Elemental Destruction, we're rated at 100 right now. And that is almost entirely me winning. As in, I just prevented Merps from having a say. I totally bully Merps on Elemental Destruction. I admit it. I just refuse. I would feel so bad if we put it where... Like, where did you want it? Like a 60 or something? I
wanted it at like a 70-ish. Around a 70.
No, like around a 70. That's a 30-point difference from where I wanted it. This is not even close, right? Like, you look at the North Sea Kraken, and you're like, oh, we disagree so much. Merps wanted it at like an 80, maybe a 78. I wanted it at a 90. That's a 10, 12-point difference. And by the way, guys, if you're wondering what that noise is in the background, those are Merps' chinchillas.
I apologize. They are going crazy right now because they're just as excited over TGT as we are.
Yeah, and they're actually afraid of the Elemental Destruction that's about to wreck your entire apartment.
Indeed. So, what is your argument? Because every time you describe it to me, I think I sort of zone out or I get in denial because it's so ridiculous. Please go on. Please.
I think you just zone out anyway when I speak. So that part's not new. Even when I say totally normal, rational things. Elemental Destruction does the one thing that Flame Strike can never do, which is that it clears your opponent's board and gets you the initiative. Flame Strike can only do it... Sure. Flame Strike can only do it if you already have a board. But if you already have a board, chances are your opponent doesn't have a ridiculously huge board that you really want to Flame Strike. You'd be getting normal-ish value out of the Flame Strike, and you can probably take care of what your opponent puts out, right? You don't need to Flame Strike. It's just some kind of a value proposition. It's not a, oh, if I don't Flame Strike here, I can't take care of his board. So you're in less dire need of it when you have the board as a Flame Strike. You really want to play Flame Strike when you don't have the board and you kill a bunch of his stuff, right? Or when you have one small thing on the board and you kill a bunch of his stuff. Elemental Destruction works the same way, except after you do that with a Flame Strike when you don't have the board, you still don't have the board, your opponent reloads, hits you to the face, you still die. Because if your opponent has been having the board, he's probably been hitting you to the face some, and you're probably wanting to like actually stop everything from happening. On the other hand, Elemental Destruction, you remove everything, you can put out 7 mana's worth of a board. You don't use it on turn 3, by the way. I never use that on turn 3. Unless for some reason you're like, you know, your opponent has dropped 8 1-drops and you realize you're going to die. So you use it on turn 10, on turn 9, even on turn 7, and then you drop along... What matters isn't the overload, what matters is what you can do on that turn. So you drop your board, and the next turn, your opponent can only play a couple of mana more tempo than you did that turn. And so you still have the initiative on the board to make your trades. So you're forcing your opponent to have like particular minions that you can't trade well with or whatever. And you still have mana the next turn, right? What's a Overload 5? You have 5 mana the next turn. That's enough for any removal you're going to play, to remove anything that he plays, or it's enough for you to do a small removal if he spreads wide, or a board clear like a Lightning Storm or Forked Lightnings. Which brings me to the next point, which is that your next turn is not all that screwed, because 5 mana is plenty, and on top of that, a lot of Shaman cards overload, so you can overload again on top of that to delay the effect by even one more turn. It just works very well for the Shaman when the Shaman's in trouble. And if you're ahead on the board, I don't really care. I think you're fine. You don't need that card.
Okay. So my first counter argument against what you just said is, in your ideal scenario, you are at turn 10. You're at turn 10 and you need to remove. So everything had to have played out in kind of this way that you wanted.
No, in the way I didn't want, because I don't want to be behind on the board on turn 10.
No, you don't want to be behind, but you're basically saying that Elemental Destruction is just not that great earlier on, right?
Yeah.
So we're at turn 10. Why is it lower value than something like Mind Control then?
Because you're less screwed by one big thing than you are by a whole freaking board.
So they need a board, and you kind of have a board.
Because you know what happens with Mind Control, right? You Mind Control your opponent, they go face, you lose. Right? That's what happens with Mind Control.
That's fair. But it's this scenario where you have... So you're on turn 10, you have maybe a couple minions, they're not enough to take care of them, or you have no minions and you just Elemental Destruction. It seems to be just such a specific case, and you're more often going to have
the specific case is your opponent is up on the board compared to you in the late game. That's not very specific. It's not all the time, but it's all the time that you're in trouble. Like, why is a Matter Bomber so good? Even though it's total RNG, and even though it hits your stuff too. It's because it does one of the rare things that allows you to flip the board, whereas your other cards generally don't.
You still have clears as Shaman. You still have stuff like Lightning Storms, which I think is a better card than Elemental
2-3
Destruction.
damage.
2 to 3 damage, plus there's not the disadvantage of having to clear your own minions. Like, if you're pretty close on the board and you have Elemental Destruction, what do you do with it? Do you use it and overload 5 mana? So you have an unplayable card then.
Yeah. If you have the board, do you play a Matter Bomber? No.
Matter Bomber is still different. You still put out a body out there. But anyways,
but that's the point. Elemental Destruction allows you to put out a ton of bodies out there. 7 mana's worth of bodies. That's a lot of bodies.
You can put out a lot of bodies, but then you're, that overload is still going to come back and hit you. They still have one turn after that.
Yeah,
turn
but you have the initiative. So it's not only a card that gives you initiative on a turn when you really need initiative. It also then gives you 7 mana's worth of initiative on the next turn, essentially, compared to like your normal clears. All right, we've spelled out the cases. You guys can debate among yourselves, and you can also come back in like a week and be like, "You're an idiot, Adwick. Merps was totally right. This card is like a 60."
They don't have to wait a week. They don't have to wait a week.
It'll be instant.
They could just say
it's an epic card.
Yeah.
You're not going to see it that often. All right. Moving on, we do have other segments, but this is going to wrap up pretty quickly from here. We have a question from a goat, and today's question from the goat is actually Hearthstone related for once, to actual Hearthstone Arena. And the goat asks, if I want to gain an edge during the first week of TGT, what class should I play in the arena? Merps?
Great question from the goat. I wonder if we thought of this question. Anyways, what you want to look out for during the first week of TGT is what classes will people be playing proportionally more than they are right now. And we can kind of look at BRM and get clues. So you want to identify either like cool cards or classes that are getting some power cards that people are really hyped about. And I think those two classes are going to be Shamans and Druids. Now, Adwick has stated before that Shamans, he doesn't believe that Shamans will be that powerful, but they got some cool totem cards. People are looking forward to them. And Adwick doesn't believe in Totem Golem, but a lot of people do. So I think a lot of people will be picking Shamans. A lot of people will be picking Druids. So Adwick, tell us, what should you pick if you're playing to counter Shamans and Druids?
Well, it's kind of a weird position, right? Because to counter Shamans, the easiest thing to counter Shamans is Paladins. You get a 1-1, they get a 0-2, you build up a board, they lose. Very, very easy. The sad part is Paladins are really bad against Druids, because Druids put out a bunch of big things, you can't do anything, you lose. So it's kind of it depends on how you see this, right? I think the effect of more Shamans and more Druids is not going to be as pronounced, maybe on the Druid side, I don't think on the Shaman side, as it was in BRM. because Imp Gangboss and Fireguard Destroyer were like ridiculous cards. And no matter how good you think the totems are in Shamans, I don't think anyone thinks they're like as ridiculous as a Fireguard Destroyer. And for the Druids, there's still 1 and 2 drops, right? You can only get so excited about 1 and 2 drops as a Druid. So I don't think the excitement is going to be as big of a change as the BRM scale, and I think that these classes were so underplayed to begin with that the difference is not going to be that big. And they cancel out the best class that faces Shamans. And what's the best class against the Druid? You want to be a Priest, right? But Shamans are really bad if you're a Priest, because they have all the things they ever need to swing the board if you ever get on it. They're one of the few classes that can get back on the board against a Priest. And on top of that, they have totems that you really need one card, a diluted card, Holy Nova, to be able to take care of. And otherwise, the totems become card advantage once they have any way to buff it. And you lose, and you'll never get back on the board, and they'll keep tapping. So, and Shamans also, obviously, they don't have like huge things for you to mind control or anything like that. They're not a Druid. So you're kind of in this rough spot, I think. I don't know. What do you think, Merps?
Yeah, I think you're in a rough spot. And the 2 classes I would play are, number 1, Paladins, because I think that they have an advantage over Shamans. And the matchup versus Druids is just okay. But I think that's kind of more, coin flippy there. And I think Rogues do pretty well against these 2 classes as well. They could just, put out lots of tempo. And Rogue is one of the classes with hard removal as well.
That's true.
For Druid. And with Druid, you really need those hard removals, which the Rogue really has, and also the Rogue can kind of burst down Druid, so to prevent them from playing this super late, super value game.
Yeah, I agree. All right, now we're finally on to Card Good Bad, where we tell you whether a card is good or bad. And today we're going to tell you whether Brewmasters are good or bad. I mean, we can tell you right now they're bad. Not that they're like
spoiler alert.
Not that they're bad, but that they're less than their regular counterparts, right? We have Youthful Brewmaster rated 4 points below a Raptor. We have Ancient Brewmaster rated 8 points below a Lost Hall Strider. They're bad. So why are they bad? Why are we so confident saying that they're bad?
Anti-tempo right now, and this could change, guys. This could change after TGT, but right now we are in a clear tempo meta, in which case you need to be able to use your mana efficiently, otherwise you're going to get behind, and once you're behind, your opponent just has all the options. They can go face, they can do whatever they want with the board, and you're just trying to claw back at that point. And in a tempo meta, you do not want to brew something back to your hand to gain a tiny bit of value. There are some things that are really good. If you can brew back an Argent Commander, that's like pretty good, but that's still 6 mana. If you're just brewing back like an Earthen Ring Farseer, you're basically paying 3 mana for 3 health. That's in line with just a Priest Hero power. So what you're doing is you're taking stuff back into your hand to replay it again, and that's the best case scenario. A lot of times what happens is you're on turn 6 and you love to play a Raptor and a Yeti, but because you have something out on the board already, you can't play a Raptor or a Yeti and still have that thing on the board. You have to brew something back if you did want to play the Brewmaster. So it just becomes really awkward. And through our experience, and as we see from Hearth Arena stats, Brewmasters are just worse than their vanilla counterparts, because you're going to encounter that scenario more often than the Argent Commander or the Earthen Ring Farseer example. You're going to get caught in these tricky situations where you have something on board. You want that to stay on the board, but you also want to play the Brewmaster, and that's how it can cause you to lose more often than it can cause you to win.
Yeah, so I think this is the key point here. It's a tempo meta and not a control meta. If it becomes a control meta, then what happens? Then card advantage, which is what the Brewmaster gets you. It gets you the whole card back that you've already hit into something with, or that you've already used the Battle Cry on. It gets you the whole card back that you can play again. So whenever card advantage becomes more important than tempo, Brewmasters are going to become better than Raptors. And whenever card advantage is less important than tempo, which as it currently is, and which Arena has always been, but more so after much more so after GVG came out, then the Brewmasters are going to continue to suffer in the rankings. And there's another card that's very similar to this released in TGT. It's the Coliseum Manager. This is a great card because it is the only card that the Warrior is really good with as far as Inspire goes, because you never want to tap as the warrior, and so it doesn't matter. You just get a nice 2/5 for 3 mana with no downside, and that's pretty good. But if you do have a downside, and the downside reads you're a mage and you can't ping things, well, that's really awful, because sometimes you really do need to ping things, and your opponent can play to that, right? They can set up things where you need to deal 1 damage, and you have to make a choice of whether to sap your own minion or to not ping. So something like the mage would be really awful with Colosseum Manager, but something like the paladin would even be, despite having also a really powerful hero power, would be okay, because you never really need a 1/1. You're never like, okay, this turn I need a 1/1. It's kind of like, this is a really flexible, good bonus I could just get. So once again, these Inspire cards, they're all different for all different classes. It's not just one ranking, like Mage hero power good, Warrior hero power bad, Mage good, Warrior bad. You gotta shuffle things around a lot, except for the Warrior. This is kind of the only time it gets shuffled anywhere. But yeah. So that's how things go, and because I do think the meta is going to slow down, I think Brewmasters are going to make a comeback. I don't think it's going to make a comeback to the degree that they'll be better than their counterparts, but they may get to be, I don't even know if they'll get to be even, but I think they're currently a little undervalued for this upcoming meta.
I think so, but this is something we won't change for now, and we'll just see how it works out.
Yeah. So that wraps us up for today. You have anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, I'm just basking in my victory right now. I'm good.
Okay. That's it for Mus. Adwicta, ADWCTA.
All right, this is Merps signing out. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, next week we're actually going to talk about, for a card good bad, a new TGT card that we'll figure out sometime this week. Whichever card seems to be getting the most attention, or that we were like super wrong on. Who knows? It could be a card we've already talked about, like the North Sea Kraken or the Elemental Destruction. And that's it for us. I'm now going to preview our new outro that we will get someone else to say from here on out.
Awesome.
Enjoying the Lightforge? For the full rundown on Hearthstone Arena draft strategies, card reviews, and arena gameplay, follow us on YouTube, Twitter, or twitch.tv at ADWCTA, or visit our website at ggogaming.com. See you next week.